Going live on YouTube, so everyone keep that in mind. Just keep in mind, we want to, again, I don't know who watches these. I have noticed, I will share with the group that I have noticed that our YouTube views are not zero. Oh, hey, it's Roger. Hey, Roger. It's Our YouTube views are not zero, which means some people are indeed watching us, all of us here. Uh, I don't need to record this. I'm just going to stop the recording, except it's going on YouTube, so we don't need to record it on Zoom because, of course, we are on YouTube.
That could be good and that could be bad.
Well, being on YouTube can only be good for those who want to increase in knowledge, especially tonight about the tribes of modern Israel. So, thank you all again for joining us, our learning, and I'll share exactly from who our learning is coming from within the Shalom Hartman Institute. But as usual, I like to share this series of lessons is derived from my learning at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem on modern Israel and Zionism. And tonight's class is on the tribes of modern Israel. So before we start sharing sources and taking everyone off of our screen, everyone can see each other, which is a wonderful blessing of our Zoom and owled existence learning apparatus. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is I want you to, if it helps you to close your eyes to visualize it, you can do that, but of course, visualization may vary by individuals. What I want you to do is to picture an Israeli, just one person. What are they wearing? What are they doing? What's their background? Just take a second and think of an Israeli. When you've got one, you can put a silly hat on. No, we don't have to make fun of the bucket hats, and we're not friars here. But when you've got one, somebody raise your hand and say, I know what an Israeli looks like. Yes, Roger. You gotta unmute yourself, my friend. You still gotta unmute yourself, my friend.
I can't hear.
No, he's gonna, there you go.
Yari, he's on a bicycle touring Vietnam.
Wait, sorry, I got on a bicycle touring Vietnam. Can I get a little more?
He was a member of Kibbutz Neat Mordechai. He was an officer in Israel's version of the SEALs, and then he made a lot of money in software programming.
Baruch Hashem. He made a lot of money in software now. But yeah. Okay, so
Startup Nation.
perfect. Thank you. That's exactly what I needed, Roger. I really appreciate it. Who else has an Israeli? Jane.
I'm thinking about my brother who is not an Israeli but lived on a kibbutz for a year and did agriculture, and he talked about how he would work with others and they'd lift up water pipes and mice would run out of them, and I can just picture all these Israelis working
Right.
on the fields.
Another
In the fields.
kibbutznik, another agriculture. Well, the now Mordechai guy is less of an agriculturalist, more of a shoemaker. But in any event, uh, they do agriculture. I know. Sorry, just the biggest thing. Anyway, but yes. So another kibbutznik, another IEF person, another this time an agriculturalist. Wonderful. Along with who else has and somebody in the room want to share?
I have many cousins that are Israelis.
Hey, but give me an Israeli.
And he went back to Israel. He graduated K-State with an engineering degree, worked for AT&T for a while, then returned to Israel. Another cousin, David, he worked in real estate in Washington, D.C. took all the understanding he had from selling properties in Washington and now sells properties in Israel. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is they're not
Immigrants.
they're not very much different than you and I who
So like American Jews who moved to who lived did some stuff and moved to Israel.
you know they
Okay.
speak Hebrew. And
Well,
they
sure.
speak-
Now, okay, they speak Hebrew. Great, good to know.
And they speak English, and
They speak Hebrew and English.
they have a great understanding of us, and probably a better understanding of us than we have of them.
Okay, all
They
very interesting.
They all seem to be very confident. This
Confident.
was this is what stood out in my mind about my cousins from Israel.
Okay.
They were extremely confident.
And a lot of good demographic things you shared with us also. They speak Hebrew and English. They they're driven. They do all kinds of they gain skills. They've been abroad. These are all things we're going to be pointing to. Lauren, you had your hand up. I want to give you the chance to share yours.
Yes, I have a university classmate. He was an American Vietnam draft dodger who came to Canada and Montreal, but then left and made Aliyah to Israel and joined the Israeli Defense Forces. He'd be old like me now, and so I imagine him being retired in a coffee house and holding forth.
Okay. And 1 second. I'm sorry. I have to pull up something which you all will see in a second. Okay. So, the image I got from all of you, if I were writing this on a whiteboard, which we're on Zoom and YouTube, so that doesn't work great. I heard a lot of the same person. I heard a lot of the kibbutznik, the Ashkenazi, the English Hebrew knower. That might not be a given for every sector of Israeli society today. Either of those languages, either or either. I heard a lot of the same guy. For a long time, that image was accurate. That was the new Jew that Zionism created. And the image that Israel cultivated well into the 90s. So the first thing we're going to do is I want to play you a speech given now some 7 or 8 years ago, I think. More than that, actually. Maybe a couple more than that. Given by a former president of Israel named Reuven Rivlin. And I need to share my screen. Share sound, optimize for video sharing.
כיתות א' היום מורכבות מכ-38% חילונים ממלכתיים, כ-15% דתיים לאומיים, ממלכתיים דתיים, כרבע ערבים וקרוב לרבע חרדים. התהליכים הדמוגרפיים המעצבים מחדש את פניה של החברה הישראלית יצרו למעשה סדר ישראלי חדש. סדר שבו אין עוד רוב ברור ואין מיעוטים ברורים. סדר שבו החברה הישראלית מורכבת מ4 מגזרים, ואם נרצה 4 שבטים מרכזיים שהם שונים במהותם, אלה מאלה שילכו ויתקרבו זה אל זה בגודלם. אם לא נצמצם את הפערים הנוכחיים בשיעור ההשתתפות בשוק העבודה וברמות השכר של הציבור הערבי והחרדי, שעתידים להיות מחצית מכוח העבודה, ישראל לא תוכל להמשיך ולהיות כלכלה מפותחת. הבורות ההדדית והיעדר שפה משותפת בין 4 המגזרים הללו, שהולכים ומדמים בגודלם, רק מגבירה את המתח, הפחד, העוינות והתחרות ביניהם. בשנה הראשונה לכהונתי פעלתי בניסיון לעורר כל צד בתוכנו, לראות את הצד האחר גם כשזה קשה. אני קורא היום לכולם, התגייסו יחד איתי לאתגר. אני שותף של כל מי שמוכן לתת את חלקו במשימה הזו. אני כאן לשירותכם, לשירותה של החברה הישראלית כולה. רק כך, יחד ובשותפות, נוכל לחדש תקווה ישראלית.
So, as President Rivlin shared with us, if you walk into a first grade classroom in Israel today, you are not likely to see a room full of exactly who you all shared would be, you know. One second, can I do this? That would be awesome. No, I can't. Yeah, I can do this. Okay, sorry, I have to move this for our friends who are here in the room. Okay, so we're looking at this at our image here. Basically summarizing what President Rivlin was saying. Some of this does other things than that. But about 38% of the Israelis entering the first grade, when he said this was years ago, were about 38% Chiloni, or secular, about 15% Dati Leumi, and about a quarter each of Haredi, a little under a quarter Haredi, and a full quarter Aravi, or Arab. So this is a different core grouping than we all reflected on understanding for Israel as we thought about an Israeli. Now,
No, you asked us who we knew.
no, I said describe an Israeli or tell me about an Israeli, not someone you knew. Could be anybody. Well, the script here, I think. But in any event, it's okay. A lot of people have that. You all were wonderful. That's the exact answer I wanted and expected. So let's take a look now. Again, this is from the same speech translated that we just heard President Rivlin give. So he shares, in the 1990s, Israeli society comprised a clear and firm majority, a large secular Zionist majority, and beside it 3 minority groups. But today we have a reality in which there is no longer a clear majority nor clear minority groups, a reality in which Israeli society is comprised of 4 population sectors, or if you will, 4 principal tribes, essentially different from each other and growing closer in size. Whether we like it or not, the makeup of the stakeholders of Israeli society and of the State of Israel is changing before our eyes. So a discussion question we have here is, why is the loss of a majority frightening, or a cause of concern, at least enough for him to give this? Clearly, Reuven Rivlin identifies with the Chiloni Zionist majority. And it seems like there is some level of being concerned about the change in demographics. Why might there be concern about it?
To quote Trump, he's saying Europe as we know it will cease to exist, in those countries that are significant to us and to the world will no longer be around. And basically, he's talking about the homogeneous uh, changes that is taking place in the population, that they're no longer going to be identified as English or French or Spanish. They're no longer going to have their special identity.
Okay.
And
So you're saying Rivlin
so-
is saying something
so-
like what Trump is saying?
so-
I'm just trying to
Yeah, what I'm saying basically turns my stomach, for
okay.
for him to basically say that you know these countries are going to be flushed down the toilet because they no longer have a significant majority that is identifiable. I'd rather believe that it's possible for these groups to coexist, and it will have to coexist because that's the reality.
And they very well will have to coexist. I don't necessarily track the comparison to Europe, although, or leaving Europe aside for this conversation. As far as Israel goes, I'm still looking for why is the loss of a majority. Lay it all. I mean, we're on the internet, but come on, I'll be honest with you. Be honest with me. Roger, go ahead. Why is the loss of a majority so frightening for the Chilonim?
Because they fear the loss of a democracy and democratic values that have long been associated with the state of Israel.
Sure, that's a major concern. A major concern is that the nature of the state might change. Let's get down to an even more basic level, quite frankly. They built the state. They built every orifice of the institutions of the state, from the kibbutzim you mentioned to the IDF to all of it. And they feel some level of that the nature of the state being the way it was got it to the success that it enjoys presently. That it is only because of the intrinsic setup of the state as a liberal democracy, as Roger was saying, as a state for all its citizens that's also a Jewish state that can be both of these things, that it's that they see as the core secret sauce. And if that basic contract gets changed, they don't that's not the state they're still even the majority, even though a smaller majority. It's not the state they originally would have planned on, and that's an important thing to think about.
Who's really running it? The technocrats and the people with the ability to understand the technology, artificial intelligence, etc. And that really is where it's all going, especially for a state like Israel, which is totally dependent upon technology.
And yet they could face a brain drain if the Chilonim leave.
They could what?
They could face a brain drain if the Chilonim leave. All the people that you said went and became, Baruch Hashem, they became big tech money makers. They're going to go to the U.S. They're going to leave Israel if it becomes, or they might. That's what they threaten to do.
They're not going to leave this.
Okay, I hope not personally.
They're not
But
going to leave this.
sure.
This,
One sec, Roger. I see your hand. Just yeah. Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Apropos of the brain drain, there was a joke in the election in Israel after Ehud Barak when Sharon was elected, and the joke was what's the more wealthy suburb right next to Netanya? I've forgotten its name now.
Herzliya, Caesarea.
Herzliya. That in a Herzliya class, they held a mock election among the Hilonim for the grade schoolers, and Sharon won. And one of the grade schoolers came home and was asked by his parents, "How's that possible?" And the grade schooler said, "Because you said if Sharon wins, we're going to move to the United States." I mean, it was a joke, but
Yeah,
that
no. It is funny, and to be fair, there has been somewhat of a brain drain in the last couple of years, with the most not because of October 7th and Israelis running away, God forbid. That's not at all it. Israelis were happy to be invested in the state, especially after October 7th. But this government has done some damage to some. It has caused some people to want to leave who contribute a lot to the state, and that gets into a conversation about all kinds of things, about language, about contribution. If you noted in Rivlin's concern, one part was half the workforce won't speak Hebrew, or will speak Hebrew, or might not speak to the right. It might not be. We might not be investing in their education enough. We might not be investing in integrating them enough. And this is, of course, he's talking about the Arab sector and the Haredi sector, both of which have continued to be ignored for the almost decade since he gave that speech. The Haredi sector, because they're very politically powerful, and the Arab sector, because the government doesn't care to do anything, uh, for various reasons. Yeah. Okay, let me see here. And why might this change, the changing of the state of Israel, be viewed as an opportunity by certain other tribes?
Yeah. Who's moving to Israel right now?
Religious
people
Orthodox
from-
Jews.
Lots of people who are afraid in Europe, who are
Orthodox Jews.
who are concerned, and there's probably more people moving in than moving out.
It's close. I want it to be more people moving in. I really do. I'm not I'm trying to, yeah, I'm just saying. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I'm sure they could be found without too much what have you. But again, why might it be viewed as an opportunity by some of these other so-called tribes? The ones that stand to gain, why might they gain? What could they gain?
So,
annexation of the West Bank.
Okay, so the the Tilumi could get the annexation of the West Bank. The more powerful they get, everyone's getting more powerful at the expense of the Chilonim, is essentially the situation.
Mhm.
So as the other groups get more powerful, they each have conflicting interests, right? But they might see it as an opportunity. Obviously, the religious Zionists would like to see more sovereignty over the West, over Judea and Samaria. That's what they would like. The Arab sector obviously would like more investment, but also can play a role in the larger their political presence get, the more they can. For the first time ever in the last government, the change government, an Arab party was part of the government. That's the first time in the history of the state of Israel. But that's happening because of the rising political power of the Arab population as they grow, because they have the right to vote, and a lot of them use it. And so they vote for their own parties, and it gives them power. And now they're utilizing that power, which is, many argue, a really wonderful thing. Because if they're more invested in the state, it might lead to better relations with both the Arab minority and, of course, their genetically indistinguishable brethren in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, the Palestinians. So they have something to gain as well. And the Haredim would like their autonomy. They want to have their own schools. They want to have the rabbinute control all matters of status and kashrut, and they don't want to go to the army. They put on signs, "We will die before we enlist." So, and the more political power they have, yeah. Is somebody going to say something?
Sorry, that's my dog.
Oh, no worries. So the more political power they have, the more they can. Each of these groups can affect the culture, the government, and the everything about the state of Israel. It's important to note that Israel is now if you want to call it anything, it is majority non-Ashkenazi. Even not counting the Arab sector, which obviously would make it much less European based. But even not counting the Arab sector, it's majority non-Ashkenazi, which wasn't the case for the first very, very long time in the state. Okay, so let's take a look. I want to go back to again, my quadrants thing is not perfect. I had my AI help me put this thing together, so there are random misspellings and things that don't make sense, but I'll explain it to you. Okay, so here are our 4 tribes. And we want to talk a little bit, right? We've got the dream and the nightmare. It's important to go over each of these. So the dream for the Chilonim, right? They want to be a nation like all the others. They want normalcy and they want integration into the West. The nightmare is that Israel becomes a theocracy like Iran. And that they are stuck in as a backwater. The key tension, as I mentioned to you already about them, they built the state but now feel like strangers in it as it becomes more religious, more traditional, less Ashkenazi. It becomes less like them, which is a tension. And it's shrinking is the important thing. The Dati Leumi population is pretty is pretty stable, is growing a little bit. Their dream obviously is sovereignty in the West Bank, and the nightmare is a government that will disengage, like the 2005 disengagement from Gaza. Right? That they don't want to concede any territory for peace. That's very important to them. And their key tension is the clash between the state and the Torah in the West Bank, especially. But there's also a clash between them. There are 2 religious groups. Well, really, there are 3 religious groups. The Arab group is also religious, just not Jewish. But there are 2 Jewish religious groups here. One is the Dati Leumi, and one is the Haredim. The Haredim don't serve in the IDF. The Dati Leumi do. And this is a major. This is a small, not enough to stop them from serving together in the same government, but a small tension between them. The Haredim, as I said, they want autonomy. They want to live their pure yeshiva lifestyle without any interference from even other Jews, let alone the outside world. Right? They want to rebuild a society of learners. They want that rebuilds the Torah world that was destroyed in Europe after the Holocaust.
The age of these people might be significant in understanding what's going on. Are the ultra-Orthodox very old? And
No, they're much younger, I would imagine. They have a lot of kids.
they have a lot of kids. And the secular are
Getting older on average.
on average. So
Shrinking.
they'll be shrinking.
Right, they're going down but again, this kind of thing, I don't like to go on like who's going up and down because those things are never stable, no matter what anybody says. 20 years ago, they said Israel was doomed because the Arabs are going to have so many kids that they were just going to blot out it didn't work that way. They stopped doing, as they got richer, they they stopped having as many. It doesn't always work that demographic trends go the same direction forever. But yes, as it happens, there are fewer and fewer Hilanim, and there are more and more Haredim.
Do the Haredi have larger families?
Yes.
5, 6, 7?
Yes, they have larger families on average.
Chabad, I know, does it.
Yes, they're all Haredim. Like Chabad, all the Haredim share that,
Chabad
right?
is part of the Haredi.
Chabad the Lubavitch movement is a Hasidic movement. Hasidic is one of the Haredi groups. They're not the largest. In fact, they're one of the smallest Hasidic movements, but they are a Hasidic movement, clearly. Okay, so the Haredim, I said their dream is autonomy, their nightmare is assimilation. And being drafted. And the key tension is they depend on the state for their funding, but they don't want anything to do with the ethos of the state, at least as it has existed up until now, which involves service, which they don't want to do, or see themselves as doing through Torah study, which involves, various things that contribute to the country. Which has not been their interest. And the Arab group is a large minority, about a quarter of all young people in Israel. And their dream is that Israel would become a state of all its citizens. In other words, not specifically a Jewish state. There are some, though, that just seek to achieve full civil equality. Like more money, more funding for their schools, more funding for their cities, more funding for their, all those things to bring it up to par with Jewish municipalities. Their nightmare is being, can anybody guess? I think I've got it on here, right? Yeah, I do. Their nightmare is another Nakba. Their nightmare is expulsion. That one day the Jews, who are still 79% of the population, will kick them out, and send them somewhere else. And the key tension is trying to integrate economically and socially into a state that is fundamentally, in which they are fundamentally outsiders. For perhaps they should study American Jews for for how they can best do that, but hasn't worked out that that's been what they want to do so far.
So they wanted essentially independence of the state of Israel. They live there, but they don't do any, they're not really part of the Israel.
Wait, what?
Well, the Arabs, do they want to sort of just be there, but not necessarily part of the Israeli society?
There's multiple feelings within Arab culture in Israel. The Arab Israeli community doesn't think one thing. They have even 3 political parties in Israel, although sometimes they run in some combination. Some of them are secular, like communists almost. There is a communist Arab party in the Knesset. Some of them are Islamists, essentially, the breakoffs of various Islamic movements, like Ra'am, which served in the government of the last Israeli government, and others are integrationist, or at least they used to be. There are some who are integrationist who think we should try and do more with the state, serve, do all kinds of things, maybe if not serve in the military, serve in Shirut Leumi, national service, and others who say, this state is not our state, and in fact, we only want to consider ourselves Palestinians. So there's really many opinions within the Israeli Arab society. There's not one. Yes, Lauren, you had your hand up also.
No, I didn't, Rabbi. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I thought you did. Okay. Okay. Yeah, what's up?
Human nature basically is what's in it for me?
Sure.
And if the Arab citizens see that there is benefit to them, that there's something in it for them, a better life, a better life for their children, a better life for them, they'll be all in. You don't
Um,
buy that?
it's not that it'll work for some people, but that notion, I think the last 20 years have been really good for disabusing Western liberals. And I don't use that in the term of like liberal, like Democrat. I mean that like we all are members of liberal democracies, right? Like as the citizen of a liberal democracy, you generally have certain beliefs. And one of those standard liberal beliefs is that, yeah, that anybody given an improvement in situation would come around. But that's not true. It's just not. It just never has been anywhere. There are some people who will, and that's great. But not everyone. We know not everyone. We know there are people who are motivated by other things than prosperity. So the prosperity doctrine, if we can call it that, of the 50-year period of whatever you want to call that, 1960 to 2010 or 1950 to 2000, where if just we make people's lives better, they will not want to be sectarian or whatever. It works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. That's, I mean, so by the way, Rivlin's point in his speech is that he's like, I'm willing to work with anybody. He's not saying it's a problem necessarily. He's not saying the fact that the demographics are changing is the problem. That's not what he's saying. He doesn't think that's the problem. The problem is nobody's recognizing it and nobody's changing what they're doing, their rhetoric, their actions, their funding, any of it. And Rivlin is saying you're going to have this country is not going to function the way it functions today if we don't have an honest conversation about who Israel is and who Israel's going to be.
Where are you leading us?
I'm trying to teach you about what Israel is today. I'm not.
Where is this going?
What do you mean?
This is the population of Israel, and there has to be some effort, some understanding to allow this population to work together, some motivation. And
Yeah.
my naive belief is capitalism is a major motivation.
Okay.
And a better life and food on the table and a roof over their head. And people are going to be a little more content and less likely to cause problems.
Is capitalism covariant with democracy? At least in our country, more and more is going to a few people.
And also, quite frankly, let's say they were all rich, but it was a religious theocracy.
Yeah.
Is that still Israel? Do you still like it? Do we still want that? Like, I'm just asking. Like, because the question isn't just how do we get people to not hate each other? The question is, how do we recognize Israel and what's going on there?
Among these groups, I'm sure there are people who want to form alliances with other groups. Is anything of that of a significant nature?
Sorry, one more time, rephrase
You've
for
got
me.
disparate groups. Are there people within each group that want to form some kind of common belief and activity?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, yes. We saw with this change government, there were people willing to work together. There are NGOs, civil service organizations that try and bridge gaps between Haredim and Chilonim, between the Dati Leumi and the Tel Avivians, between the Arabs and the Jewish residents of the state. There are many groups that try and do each of these things. But the important thing when we're studying Israel as American Jews, and we're going to get to the fifth tribe, in a couple minutes, and that's us in a way. We're the fifth tribe of the four tribes of modern Israel, and by that I of course mean diaspora Jews. And how we relate to the state impacts the state. By the way, directly. You all voted in the World Zionist Congress elections, the months and months and months ago, back in March or whatever. And guess what? That had an impact. It has a direct impact on the major institutions of the Jewish state, like the Jewish Agency, which has Nefesh B'Nefesh and how you make Aliyah in it, like Keren Kayemet LeYisrael, the Jewish National Fund, which is responsible for all kinds of land development projects, from synagogues to national parks in Israel. I mean, you have a direct impact. So our understanding of Israel isn't just relevant as a sociological study of a place we like. It's important because you all, like, I understand there was a little confusion about the opening question, but most of you thought about the first person when you thought about an Israeli. None of you mentioned a quarter of Israel is almost as Haredi. None of you mentioned a Haredi person. A quarter of it's Arab. None of you mentioned an Arabic speaker. 15% about is Dati Leumi. None of you said, you all said I lived in a kibbutz. Nobody said I live in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, which is what they would actually say. I'm not criticizing. It's fine.
I could tell you one thing about Israel.
Okay.
And you can't project the
Okay.
United States on Israel.
Okay.
They're not Midwest nice. They're basically argumentative, aggressive, and
I've been.
you've been there, you've been around them. They're, a lot different than a Midwesterner. And whether it's an Arab, if you watch an Arab discussion with their hands and they are arguing, and an Israeli, it's almost identical as far as the emotion and the characteristics. So
Yes, Israel's a Middle Eastern country. Yeah.
It's a lot different than
Sure.
here in the United States.
Yep.
So when you are suggesting we have to take a look at it in the context of, let's superimpose what's happening in the United States with the election on the Zionism or whatever, it may not register in Israel.
No. I'm not suggesting that you have to in any way take anything from the United States and put it on Israel. I'm suggesting it's important you understand Israel and the demographics of Israel.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because
the demographics are a heck of a lot different than living in Topeka, Kansas, or living in the United States.
Yeah, I've lived there. I'm aware. I'm aware. I've lived there myself. But we're not. You're not supposed to judge it by. Nobody's asking you to do that. That's a whole other thing that nobody's asking for. I'm asking you to understand the demographics of Israel so that when you talk about Israel or think about Israel or vote in major elections that determine the future of major institutions within the state of Israel, you knowing things about it might be helpful. That's why you're learning this, is so that you'll know the demographics are different than many people seem to think. If you know that, then you've learned it. Wonderful, great, super. That's all I'm looking for. Really, is that you can tell the difference between all these different groups and their current makeup as they make up Israel. I'm just going to try and put us in the context of Israel, not us as Topeka, but us being diaspora. This is everybody. This is the UK and India and South America and Europe, and not just Topeka. Believe it or not, There are way more Jews out there that don't live in Topeka, Kansas. Shocking. I know, I'm blowing your mind now. The internet's gonna be like, what? Is this guy crazy? Does he think
Well,
this guy thinks all the Jews live in Topeka, Kansas? It's like a Twilight Zone episode.
among the diaspora, where do we rank as far as population?
Maybe we can get some.
Topeka or America?
America.
Oh, we're number one.
that's what
As far as America, I thought you were like Topeka. I was like, oh, we're not that big. I wouldn't put us up against New York or
No, it's New York, LA. I know those
Yeah.
cities, and I loved it.
It's all good. Absolutely.
It's a long time ago when I lived there.
So let's take a look. While we're looking at these sources here, there are two just separating out. I'm going to skip over this a little bit because of timing. But this was about the split between the Chilonim and the Dati Leumi, the secular and the religious Zionists. But it's really just reinforcing what we were talking about before. So I want to move to partnership. So we're going to move to partnership now. So if we wait for these four tribes that we've been talking about, if we wait for these four tribes to agree on ideology, we will wait forever. Alana Steinhain, one of my teachers at the Shalom Hartman Institute, suggests we look at how halakha, Jewish law, works. She often states, does God care more about why you light Shabbat candles or that you light them? And of course, the answer is that you light them. The concept I want to go over here from the problem of these groups, the problem is that these groups don't understand each other. They don't work well together. They don't even, some of them speak the same languages. And they certainly have conflicting goals. Yes, we glean that from all the things I said up to this point. So, the idea is thin consensus. In other words, there doesn't need to be an agreement on narrative. For instance, about whether 1948 was a miracle delivered by God or 1948 was, if you're an Arab citizen of Israel, maybe it was a catastrophe. We don't need agreement on narratives. We just need to agree on the rules of the game so that the state takes care of the most basic things. Paying taxes, stopping at red lights, nobody does violence to each other. So let's talk about action and intention. Is it enough, for instance, let's say there are Haredi men who serve in the IDF. Is it enough for a Haredi man to serve in the IDF to get job training or for whatever reason, even if he doesn't believe in the Zionist ethos, even if he's not personally a Zionist and he doesn't care that he's defending the Jewish state? He's just like, I'm here to do this because I got called up and I'm doing it, and it's going to give me job training, and I'm going to go make money because I'm not a Torah kid, I guess. What do we think? Is it enough
Yes.
that someone serve? Yeah, Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm thinking of the argument, do your intentions matter when you do something? What matters is what you do, not necessarily the intention with which you did it.
I think that's a great perspective. I appreciate that. Thank you. Does anyone else have another perspective they'd like to share? Yes, Roger.
I think that at least when I lived there for many years, that service in the IDF was the most important manifestation of your commitment to the state of Israel. And the idea that certain groups could be exempt from service excluded them from the mainstream of society. And
Yep, that used to be the way.
and from what I read, that's still pretty much the case today, that is a real point of friction, right? Well, right now.
Absolutely. Yes, you're very right. Right now, it is a huge point of friction. The government is trying to there was for a long time an agreement that from Ben Gurion's days that Haredi students wouldn't need to go to the IDF, and the Supreme Court of Israel invalidated that just recently. Invalidated that agreement, saying that there's no legal basis for Haredi men not joining the IDF, and demanded that the IDF start enlisting them immediately. This government has been trying to work on a law to give status that the High Court can't strike down to the yeshiva students and their interest in being in yeshiva and not in the IDF. And that is a huge. There are big protests, big Haredi protests. Just 2 nights ago, I think, in Bnei Brak, they blocked a highway and they were doing, So I mean, they're. It's definitely, Roger's right. It's definitely ongoing. And while it used to be that the only way to get any job of any value in Israel was to have not, first of all served, and then also you could get the really best stuff if you served in a, in some of the, depending on your unit and force and stuff. Sometimes that was an extra connection that was very helpful. Now, that's still very much true today. I'm not at all saying that that's like that's out and not a thing. But as the needs of the population shift, it becomes less and less as the population has more and more workers that don't serve.
How do you recognize the fact that this is a Jewish state as the singular most important thing?
How do I recognize it, or how is it recognized by Israel?
How do we continue to recognize it? How do they continue to recognize it?
And that's a big debate. What you asked is a wonderful question and a very complicated one. How do they continue to recognize Israel as a Jewish state? I think the first question has to be, what does it mean for Israel to be a Jewish state? Up until this point, the Chiloni definition meant that being a Jewish state meant that it was a state of the Jews, a state for the Jewish people, both a refuge and a cultural basis from which, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, right? That the cultural and religious and every Jewish framework would flow from the land of Israel to enrich the diaspora in the whole world. That was the original idea of what it meant to be a Jewish state. Some people today would like it to maybe be a Medinat Halacha, El Halacha, a state that follows Jewish law. That's another way for it to be a Jewish state. Obviously a different way than the way it currently expresses itself for it to be a Jewish state. But is it less real or less true or less Jewish? I don't know if I know the answer to that. I know I would like it less. I think I would rather Israel not become a theocracy. But again, it's unfortunately not up to me. I am not one of these 4 tribes.
So would you expect this 25% of the Arabs to recognize the fact that they live in a Jewish state?
There was once upon a time a dream that the understanding would be that the Arab minority could, this is why originally there was no, again, the nation state law that recognizes Israel officially as the nation state only came about like in the last decade. Why didn't we have one for the first 60 years of the state? Because we didn't need one. And quite honestly, we didn't want to antagonize, they didn't want to antagonize the Arabs. It didn't make any sense. There was some level of hope that there would be integration. And by the way, there is some level of integration. Arabs sit on the Supreme Court and are doctors and nurses and lawyers and professionals of all stripes. in the state of Israel, but they don't feel Zionist. And I don't know that there's any them being Zionist, I don't know is the level, the standard to which most Israeli Jews would hope Israeli Arabs would aspire to. I think, and I'm speaking out of turn here, but it's just based on the people I know. I think most of them would be happy to have Israeli Arabs be um, just like non-Zionist democratic partners in the state, like wanting the state to be a vibrant liberal democracy. And if they could get that, they'd figure out the rest. But
What
you know,
flag do they put up in their classroom
Israel,
with the Star of David?
yes, it's required by the state. There's only one flag in Israel. I mean, there's no alternative flag without a Magen David that doesn't look like a talit. We don't have a red, black, and green version.
So that's the unifying factor.
Well, again, their population used to be like 8-9%. It didn't used to be this big. So it wasn't quite as much of a concern.
It's a nation under one flag,
Yep,
and the one flag is the Jewish state.
yep. True. Can you be an Arab citizen and be cool with that? I'm not, Roger, what do you think?
Well, I was just going to add that every street sign in Israel or every major road sign in Israel is in Hebrew and Arabic.
And English too.
Yeah, well, that's
for me, I know.
Yeah.
But
that's for business.
That's not for the locals. That's for the visitors, right? That's for the tour groups.
But the other problem is that Arabs are often not permitted. Well, they're not granted building permits.
That is also a problem.
Nearly as easily as Jews are, and there are many communities where Arabs are not allowed to settle.
In the north and the south of Israel, the Arab communities do have very many municipal issues, sometimes for different reasons, sometimes for similar ones. But they do include building permit issues, taxation issues, funding issues for police and schools, and they have seen huge crime issues because of the lack of funding for these things like police and education. So these are not insignificant problems. And the reason Ra'am entered the last government was specifically to solve the funding crisis in the Arab community, to get a huge, and they agreed to a huge influx of shekels into Arab communities. Which, very good that for what it did until the government, that only lasted a year. Excuse me, sorry. Okay. So the reason I was talking about us before is that you don't vote, but you are, all of you, American Jews, you are stakeholders in Zionism and in Israel. Tal Becker, foreign relations guy and also scholar of the Hartman Institute, argues that we American Jews often engage in what he calls fantasy Zionism, like fantasy sports. And that fantasy Zionism is we want Israel to be a mirror of our liberal American values. We say, if only Israel would do exactly what I want them to do. Right? But the real Israel is these 4 tribes. So, as the 5th tribe, which of the 4 Israeli tribes can you be a bridge to? And which one is hardest for you to understand? You can take a second to think about it, but when you've thought about it, raise your hand and I'll call on you. I'll say again, which of the 4 Israeli tribes can you be a bridge to? And which one is the hardest for you to understand? Yeah, Lord.
The easiest one to connect with is the secular one for me. Uh, there are two very difficult ones for me, the nationalist Zionists and the Haredim. I could also imagine myself trying to connect to the Arab population.
Okay.
Right.
Any other
I agree with Lauren, that's about my position too.
closest to the, you feel you could bridge
Closest
to the Hilonim? You feel like they're like you, so that's an easiest thing to connect to, whereas,
Well, I remember 1948.
well, sure, yeah.
Such optimism that was going to be a unified nation, safety place. Clearly it isn't.
Well, unified nation, parts of it.
Is there anything in common that all four groups could be participants of the army, not for the whole there?
That's the question. That's a good question. Is there something they can all equally share in?
Yeah,
Equally share
be
in?
part of
I
it.
don't know, is the answer. To this point, not so much. Maybe one day a government.
We have national things we do, that's what we pay taxes to.
Sure.
And so we all feel part of that. They have everything.
They pay lots of taxes,
No taxes, but
but I don't know that they feel patriotic about it. I'm glad you do. I don't know that I always do, if we're being honest. But I'm glad you feel very patriotic about paying your taxes. Me, I wanted to. No, I'm not going to say. We're on the internet. Tell me to say it after we go off the internet. It was a joke anyway. It's not a real thing. But still don't want the irons involved. Anyway, so any other people want to make bridges or say who they don't understand or who they find difficult to connect to? Okay. Um, okay, so I just want to end with the concept, of an aspirational Zionism, which is again Tal Becker. We have to move from a Zionism of crisis, where we're always just in need of uniting against our enemies, that things are terrible, that Israel is under assault, back to a Zionism of aspiration. Like you were mentioning at the beginning of the state, that there would be, what kind of society are we building? Are we building the kind of society? Is Israel building the kind of society that can be a light unto the nations, which should always be an aspiration of the Jewish state. So here's a takeaway I want you to take from all this. This new Israeli order, Seder Yisraelit Chadash, that President Reuven Rivlin was talking about, it's not a tragedy. We can't look at what the demographics have been or could be and keep saying, oh, well, I remember in Israel, and we must deal with Israel as it exists. And the Israel as it exists is an invitation to build a more diverse, although messy, Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. And we also, as American Jews and Zionists, must be a partner in building that. Thank you to everyone who joined on YouTube.